A year ago, I sought out to build my dream bike. KTM made a super bike motorcycle called the RC8 from 2008 to 2015. This bike, when it came out, was an absolute revelation in the terms of not just engineering, but also looks and aesthetics. The RC8 still to this day is one of the most timeless designs that we've ever seen on a fully fared motorcycle. And even now, if you don't know what it is, it still breaks necks. It's still a huge head turner, even today. The RC8 came out with an 1190cc V-twin, and at the time was one of the highest horsepower super bikes you could have. It was making around 150 to 155 rear wheel horsepower, which was nothing to snarl at. But as bikes started to evolve and get closer to that 200 horsepower range, the RC8 just left a little bit to be desired when it came to top speed. KTM discontinued the RC8 in 2015. The CEO said that they were too fast and unsafe for public streets, and that KTM would never build another super bike or a sport bike ever again. Now let's fast forward to today. If you know anything about the history of KTM, you've probably heard of a bike called the SUPERDUKE. The SUPERDUKE is a fire-breathing V-twin on steroids. It makes about 180 rear wheel horsepower, and it will have you looking at the moon anytime you even look at the throttle. It is a hooligan bike. It is the most fun you can have on two wheels, and it's definitely the best bargain for miles per gallon you could ever enjoy or experience. Unfortunately, KTM no longer makes a sport bike, but we know that the SUPERDUKE is far from a touring bike. It is a sport bike. It is a wolf in sheep's clothing, if you would. So I wanted to build the bike that KTM hasn't or wouldn't, or all of us that are waiting for this to be done will never happen. I decided to take a third gen 2021 SUPERDUKE, 180 horsepower, 1301 cc, fire-breathing engine, the whole electronics package, traction control, ABS, everything that you could want, including cruise control that you would see on a modern-day motorcycle. I wanted to stuff it into an RC8 so that we could feel and see and experience what it would be like if KTM still made this bike today. So I started this build exactly a year ago. I would say that 90% of that year of doing this build, getting up to this point, has been working on this AIRBOX. This AIRBOX that you see right here, I am proud to say is my final production of what I am going to be not only installing, but using on this bike for testing and making power and basically completing this project. We're going to see it done, and this thing is going to perform insane with this AIRBOX design. So without further ado, please join me, grab your popcorn, your tea, and your favorite beverage, and let's build an AIRBOX together. So the reason this is such a hard task is the SUPERDUKE AIRBOX, the bottom part, has all this space and extra stuff where it fits underneath the tank. This RC8 AIRBOX is a lot thinner, but actually takes up a lot more space. You can see this is the bottom cover and this is the top cover. And how this would fit on the bike, if you're not familiar with the RC8, is this basically sits right there and it slides into these boots off the throttle bodies. The throttle bodies are actually in here, and they have cables that come through and it mounts inside the AIRBOX instead of your normal, underneath the AIRBOX. So with the third gen SUPERDUKE, of course, you have the throttle bodies underneath the AIRBOX, but then you have the velocity stacks, all these things. I have 280 hours into this AIRBOX, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, well, that's not an RC8 AIRBOX. That looks different. So what I did is I scanned, that's what all this white powder is. It's 3D scanner spray. I 3D scanned the flange of the SUPERDUKE AIRBOX. So that fits, that fits, that fits. And then I merged it to the RC8 AIRBOX to make it work. Now this is sitting up here, this actually sits flush and it sits perfect, but because we have the harness just kind of in there, it's not able to push all the way down. And what's cool is with this design, it reuses the RC8 style air filter and the top AIRBOX from the RC8. So it's less parts you have to buy. Here's the issue. From the factory, this AIRBOX, at least the cover, has these baffles, these little plates that sit in here and actually restrict airflow to get the air to come in like this and then come down where the throttle bodies would be. It is a very nice looking design from the outside, but as far as flow, it is a very restricted design. And if you know anything about RC8s, a lot of people actually complain about the fact that when you do a filter, nothing changes, but also there's really not a lot of air coming in here. You get these ram airs right here that, look at how tiny. Look at how tiny. That's how much air is supposed to go in there and then get sucked into the engine. So how are you supposed to make more power with that? So after 280 hours of design, we're throwing this in the garbage. Not the filter, because that's still a good filter, but we're actually nixing the whole project of this AIRBOX right here. It's not that it was a bad design, but why do something when you can improve on it? Let me show you guys how we're gonna accomplish this task. It has been crazy. I can't believe I burnt up 300 hours of my life on that and we're just gonna chuck it. But let me show you what we're gonna do. These are Rottweiler Performance air intake. These are the filters. If you own a KTM or you know anything about KTM performance parts, then you already know who Rottweiler Performance is. They make some of the best air intake systems and smog block-offs and all kinds of parts for KTM, Husqvarna, gas, etc. This isn't a shameless plug. They make really good stuff, so we're happy to use it on our 3rd gen RC8. Now, the issue is they don't make a 3rd gen SUPERDUKE air intake system. So what I did is I got a bunch of these, universal for all their stage 2, stage 3 kits. So I got some filters, I got an extra one just in case we have to cut or really dive deep into this design, but I think it's gonna be pretty simple. Yeah, it could be famous last words. So I've got the new designed velocity stacks that we're gonna be running so we can get height and clearances. And then basically what I'm gonna do is I'm going to make this fit a 3rd gen SUPERDUKE. Just like that. Now, of course, it's gonna stick up a little bit and it's probably gonna sit like that. But just to give you an idea of how this is gonna look, and yes, before you say anything about, well, now you're gonna be sucking in hot air and all that stuff, don't worry. I make parts. So I can actually make new tunnels, make new ram air tubes that can not just come straight at it, but can also have like a little, like a little scoop in here, if you would. I'll show you. We'll get into that crazy stuff. I want to take you guys along for the ride. So today, what we're doing is we are going to scan this inside of the filter so I can make a flange. And because this is already in 3D space, I'm just going to cut this, not with a saw, because I already have it scanned into 3D space. I'm gonna cut that, delete the rest of the AIRBOX. So just imagine that this rectangle part of the flange is bolted right here, and then it'll stick up to house our Rottweiler mount. So let's get to scanning. All right, before we begin, I wanna show you what I'm using. I'm not sponsored by RevoPoint, but I just wanna show you guys, this is what I'm using to do my projects. Yes, you can use it. Yes, there's better scanners out there, but for a few $100s, I'm showing you guys on a bare budget, you could basically make your own parts. This isn't a how-to video, but I'm just taking you along for the ride to show you how I do it. So I have a RevoPoint Pop 3 scanner. I have my RevoScan software up here, so you can see this is basically how it works. Now, if you don't know anything about 3D scanning and you're new to it, you'll have to use something that lets the scanner kind of target areas so it always has a home to come back to and you don't lose your position. It makes some squiggly looking blob. So what I use is 3D scan spray, and this is like 30 bucks off Amazon. I've tried everything. I've used the foot powders and I've used the dry hairsprays, everything. Yes, they work and you can get a decent scan out of it, but this is the only product that I've used that your scans absolutely come out perfect. I'm gonna show you that. Like I say, not sponsored by this company. These are the products that I use. Now we have 2 style filters. We have the tall dome, and then we have I know it's not square, but it's more of a flat top. This one could probably work, but for what I'm looking for and trying to achieve, I think the tall dome filter is gonna work better for us. So because we're gonna use this, we're actually gonna put this over here, and I'm gonna scan the flat top. They're all the same flange size. So this little ring here with the 2 quick release little tabs, they're both the same on both models. So first, I don't like to scan on my toolbox because it gets everywhere. But what we're gonna do is apply this light coat, and you can see just with a little bit how much it goes on white. And you wanna coat everything that you basically want to scan. You want to get detail on, go ahead and scan this. Now, what's cool is this just washes right off with water. Super easy cleanup. You don't need a lot of it, but do make sure that you get all your corners and creases, and like I say, everything that you want to pick up detail on. So even though there's that foam piece there, we're really just modeling this just for the shape. I don't need a perfect scan of this because in CAD, I'm just gonna do like an outline sketch of this inside piece, make the thickness I want, and then I'm actually gonna be able to extend it. I'll show you guys. All right, let's go ahead and scan the flange. I like to work my way back and forth so it picks up its tracking points and its dots. So you'll go hit up this way a little bit. You can see I'm getting too close to it, so we back away a little bit. We're just basically going over this thing just to pick up the detail. Make sure we get that other tab. Okay, it's picking it up good. All right, that, although it might look crazy on the computer, that is a good first scan. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click complete and it'll save that scan. We'll go and clean this up in post, don't worry. We'll click on new scan. And now what I'll do is I'll take more of the other side, try to get it lined up to where it's picking up good. And we'll start scanning the other side of the flange. Now I find when you're 3D scanning, I don't know if this is maybe, just because it's a cheaper scanner, but I find it easier with this scanner if you kind of go back over the same spots and hold the scanner in one direction. So even though it's a 3D scanner, you kind of want to hold the scanner in one direction so that it can pick up all the features from that particular angle. And then when we go back and we fix these meshes and we put them together or merge them together, they'll auto line up with each other and it'll come out good. I'll show you. It looks like a bunch of craziness right now, but I'm gonna show you how to put this all together. I had to move over to this table. Unfortunately, the workbench was like too glossy. Just trying to pick up the flange. Try not to lose tracking. If you've never used a 3D scanner before, it can be very tedious and frustrating, to say the least. But it just takes a lot of patience, and the more and more that you practice with it, you'll actually you'll get way better. Like, am I gonna have a hobby scanner for the rest of my life? No, I'll definitely upgrade to one that'll make this job easier. But I feel like you don't need $1,000 worth of tools to get proper professional work. The biggest thing is just hold the scanner in the same angle, because if you do that over multiple scans, like you can see with my hand how I was just holding it like the same exact angle. I wasn't rotating it. So even though this is a 3D scanner, I find that if you try to like rotate it to get it all in one scan, it just messes up your whole model. So this is a very usable scan. We'll go ahead and save that. Click on new scan. And what I'll actually do is I will just do the complete opposite side. The same exact angle. So I'm gonna try the same exact angle like this. And you'll see that after we get our scan meshes, we can actually just merge these together and should have a pretty decent airbox. Nice and slow, keeping it the same way. The biggest thing is you do not want the scanner to lose its tracking, because then once it tries to autofocus, it may not be the same angle and same definition of where you're at. So it's very imperative to just do this slow. I'm going at 8.8 frames per second. Now you can see it lost its tracking. Don't freak out, just hold it where you're at and it'll be able to autofocus or pick back up because you've taken enough detail. So I can tell you right here, just from these 2 scans that we're gonna have, we pretty much have enough information to build this flange. Let it pick back up on its tracking. Keep it the same shape. And good. And now listen, real quick guys, I know that I can screen record and do all this for you guys, but I like for it to feel like you're right here along with me doing these projects with us. So what we're gonna do is, now that we have our scans, you can see these are ones from before and they just came out absolute dog. Bleh. They just came out really bad. So I'm actually going to delete these. That one's not too bad, maybe usable. And not too bad, but this you can see we have, this is where the hardware was still in it before I removed the hardware, and these are after, so I can actually see where my holes are gonna go. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually clean these up. So the first thing we're gonna do in RevoScan is, as you can see, a lot of the stuff that was picked up by the scanner, we're not gonna be using. So what I like to do is, now that we have our imported scans, we're gonna fuse them, and then we're gonna clean up all this noise. We're gonna delete all this excess stuff that we're not gonna wanna import into CAD, and basically we're not gonna be using. So now that that's deleted across all 4, you can see we have 4 beautiful scans of the flange. Now what I like to do is I like to just clean up a little bit more, where when these are stacked and merged together, it's not gonna overlap and just give us a cleaner scan. So once that's done, we'll go ahead and we will merge a few at a time. I try not to do too many because sometimes they don't align. I use the alignment feature, and then as you can see, the scans, 9 times out of 10, they're perfect. We generate the model, and now that's a 2-into-1 where it is cleaned up a lot. And this is probably already a usable flange, but I like to do this multiple times and then stack every scan that we have together. It just gives you that much more detail, and any holes or imperfections you may see in your scan, they'll actually go away when you merge all these models together. So now that we have it saved, I like to export it into Mesh Mixer. And now once it's in Mesh Mixer, we just fix all the holes, and then I end up importing it into Fusion 360. All right, so this is after 35 hours of design work. What I did was I cut out the flange of the other scan of the custom AIRBOX, the big RC8 style AIRBOX, and I just created this flange design. And then I just created these walls that basically went from that 3D sketch of the flange that we scanned, and I pretty much just lofted them together to create just a rough shape of the AIRBOX of what we're going for, but on the inside, it's 3rd gen SUPERDUKE. So basically this is a 3rd gen SUPERDUKE flange with a flange to fit a Rottweiler performance intake. This is just a rough draft. I know I'm gonna have to add things like the air intake temp sensor mount, as well as here on the back side of this, it needs to have like a little nipple that's gonna go to the crankcase breather. So now that we have kind of a rough design and basically 9/10 of the way there, let's go ahead and print this and then see how it fits, and then we can make changes for our final production design. So after almost 35 hours of design, we are printing. So as you guys seen in the time lapse, there was a bunch of changes. It took a long time. You know, sometimes working with CAD to do the smallest things, it can be 500 steps, but we have the AIRBOX flange, whatever you want to call it, printing, as well as the modified velocity stacks, they're printing. Basically, to go over it in the design, this is not the final design. This is just the prototype, because I still need to add the IAT sensor, you know, the air temp sensor to the box, as well as the crankcase vent little nipple that hangs off the back of it. So this is like a test print, but if all goes well, fitment's good, everything checks out, then we can spend a little bit more time with the design and get it finished, and then have an AIRBOX. Well, here's our velocity stacks. Something wrong with the MCU, or I don't know, it said some kind of warning, but honestly, I've never had that issue before, so I'm just gonna reprint those. But our AIRBOX, unfortunately, what I was worried about with this thin wall right here, what I was kind of fixing, I mean, it's okay, it's plenty strong enough, but the issue is because it's such a skinny line that the printer has to drop that stuff onto, it just makes it to where it wouldn't basically stick on this, and it layer shifted. So if you see this, it looks like it printed everything over here. Yeah, that's because this layer, it was printing, and then when the head went to go this way, it moved that layer. Oh man, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to get good data off of this. Well, we can at least see our flange. Let me pull this off. Yeah, we got a lot of cleanup to do. A lot of fixing. We don't even know if our flange is gonna line up. But at least see if it fits the filter. Yeah. And that's why this is a prototype. You know, we basically go through design, a prototype printing phase, which is this. We usually print out of PLA, but I need it out of the PA12 carbon fiber because there's flex. Basically, it has to be printed out of the finished material that it's going to be printed out of, just so we can make sure it works. Let's see how she fits the filter. Well, as expected, fitment is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. We just need the rest of the AIRBOX with the flange. Like, to be honest, guys, I think I'm just going to fix this design and basically just print once. So we can at least see where it would mount up to the front of this AIRBOX. I think we're gonna be good. Hope it's not too tall, but I don't think it is. I really don't think it is. Let's try the other one. Maybe that's why it looked too big. Oh yeah. Man, this thing's gonna fit perfect. And then boom. So I can actually make those thicker, make that flange a little better, but that's pretty much the AIRBOX, how it's gonna sit and how it's gonna be. It's right there. I do think that it's gonna stick up like this because the way the design is. So what I have to add is right here on the rear cylinder, you can see this is a crankcase breather. You don't block this off. Like even with our smog block off, you don't block off that one because this is where like pressurized oil, it basically disperses, you know, not so much liquid, but like imagine like a mist would come out of your cylinder head. So that usually goes into the AIRBOX, or people run like a little, you know, looks like a little mushroom crankcase breather. I would like this to be factory-esque. So because I have the space here, it would have been nice to see exactly where we would have been with the rest of the print. But I mean, from prototyping and design, I can kind of speculate that like right here, I think I may just have like a 90, you know what I mean? A little bit of angle, just so it goes straight down there and it's out of the way of the flange. And then also on the front side, there's a sensor mount for the intake temp. You can see in the AIRBOX that I made, you can see there's that temp sensor that goes right there. So because we're deleting all that, I'm thinking we might as well just go the easy route and put one right here in the front. I don't want to put it down because it's really close to the cylinder, and I don't want to put it like straight out like that, because we are gonna have some kind of ram air, and we're gonna have ABS pump in here too. So we're gonna have a bunch of junk here. Maybe we can just mount it right here on the side and make it easy. But I don't wanna get anything close to the tank. Okay, back to design. This is the face of somebody that's been designing nonstop for 40 hours. I'm tired, boys. We got it done. We got it done. We have the final design done. I have the add-ons that were needed for the AIRBOX flange, where we have the intake temp sensor mount. And we also have the little, bung hole part off the back for the crankcase breather. I modified the velocity stacks a bit. And then yesterday, throughout all this mess, I was having 3D printer problems. And like all things that are 3D printing, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There was really no fix for it. I used another slicer and that worked. And then I used the same slicer and it's working on the AIRBOX. I'm not gonna jinx it. Anyways, it's working perfect. Velocity stacks just got done. AIRBOX, we got 13 more hours. Look at these babies. Those are nice. Don't worry, this is still kind of a prototype. Although this is final production first print, there's still gonna be modifications as far as the settings. When when these go into production, we dial the settings in just every time. We're always making changes just to, improve it. So you can actually see like here, there's a little bit of lines and stuff like that. But I could not get these to print with the Cheaty slicer. They kept failing all at the same place. And it kept saying like MCU overheating issue. So I tried ironing on, ironing off. I tried a bunch of different settings, fans on, fans off. I put it in Orca and it printed the first time. So I don't know. I don't know what the issue was with that, but check out the AIRBOX. Oh man. It's gonna look so good. Well, here it is, fresh off the printer. Just pulled all the support off. I put the little clasp pieces that the Rottweiler Performance intake uses. All right, the moment of truth. And then it pushes down and locks in. When it's locked, there's no gap. No gap. Hey, real quick, don't worry. We're gonna polish these up and make this look brand new. This is all mock-up in building phase. So this isn't cleaning phase yet, so don't comment down below and at me about these nasty throttle bodies. But guys, we are good. That looks about right. And then the intake temp sensor mount that we put. So let me start installing these. One thing I did notice is this piece, pretty much how the stock SUPERDUKE works, is you have this rubber piece that slides over this plastic nipple. So it's airtight. And what happens is this fits in between. It kind of sandwiches. You can see where I put that recess in there. So this fits down in there like this, and then this plastic piece screws on top of it. Well, it actually goes like this, but as you can see, because we had to dissect so much of the original flange to make it fit this Rottweiler style flange, I'm gonna have to shorten this down. So let me go ahead and trim up this piece off of here and basically mock fit it. And now look, this is what I was talking about. This right here, it's ugly. I mean, if you rub your finger across it, it's really not that rough. It's actually fairly smooth, but it doesn't look good in my opinion. Like I wouldn't sell this to somebody that wanted to buy this AIRBOX kit. The outside looks great, bottom, not that bad, but it's just, this was I say quick print, but this was still an 18-hour print. But once we have the design finalized and everything's good and we give it the stamp of approval, then we can go ahead, we can fine tune these settings, basically shrink our layer lines, and it'll be a lot slower process, but the airboxes will come out way smoother. So let me get to cutting and let's mock fit this up for the first time. Got the piece all nice and trimmed. I mean, it doesn't look too bad. You know, if you guys are gonna end up using one of my kits to do this swap, then this is kind of up to you as far as if you wanna cut this, or further down the road, I may just 3D print, you know, like a custom piece that fits better. But it fits now perfectly on the inside of our airbox. So let's do a little mock fit. This is the injector harness. So this is basically underneath the airbox and it goes like that. So you would kind of feed this in through the airbox. And then that little piece right here is what fits in that little divot like the factory setup. And I really hope it's not too close to the wiring. It's not too bad. No, it actually fits nice. Wow, like that piece literally just fit in there so snug. It doesn't even have this cap over it yet. And it's like super good fitting. Man, pat on the back for me, for sure. Sorry to toot my own horn, but usually when you're designing and you're doing fitment for the first time, you don't get this lucky. So I was really happy that measurements lined up. Everything's perfectly good there. And then let's see if the cover fits over top. Oh, wow. It's perfect. Should fit that little square. Oh, man. So we're a little off on the square. I don't know if you can see that. It's almost like it's turned. Let's see if we can kind of move it around. We want that square to be perfect on there. I mean, that's pretty lined up. Let me throw some screws in here. And yes, although it's 3D printed, I do tap the holes. So in Fusion 360, instead of just making it a hole that it's the right size for the screw, I do tap it. You know, it's not always the most accurate, but what's cool is if you tap it into the plastic or the filament, you know, the 3D printing material, if it's a little short, it's perfect because it bites into this plastic really well. Now, I like to tap it because if you do just a solid hole, what ends up happening is if you take that screw in and out a few times, then you're actually gonna ream the hole out and it's not gonna get tight no more. You can see this is actually tightening down just like it was metal. Now I'm just gonna hand tighten it, and when final assembly's done, we can torque it down a bit. But I mean, that is, I don't know if you guys can see, you know, it might be a little collapsed, but that is an airtight seal around that piece completely. I do see, what's crazy is my design, it's not a gap that's going through and creating air, but you can see it's more rounded on the OEM rubber part, and I squared it off. So little stuff like that can be fixed. Now, let's throw it on the bike. So this, the plug for this, I do believe is right here. So this would run maybe this way, just over it. Make sure we clear, but it looks like we are. Oh yeah, look at that. Even just pushing this over top, we can push that seam around it, boom, and that fits perfectly flush. This, of course, we're not mounted all of the way yet. And that pushes down like that. Our injectors are out of the way. Let's mount some velocity stacks. I did off camera test the intake temp sensor, and it fits really well. Like in the airbox, it's gonna be great, but I want this to look a little better. So in the final design, I'm gonna actually like protrude the airbox past this, so it'll be like recessed and sit more flush mount. So like I said, those are minor changes that we're gonna have to do. Also, from our little butt plug here, I want to kind of angle it a little bit more this way and maybe a little bit more down. That way this hose we can move, but that'll give us more free flowing area to route, you know, the wiring, the tank, things like that. We want to leave as much open space between other parts on the bike, just so we don't have any issues while we're testing, you know, this first First swap in the world, so we're kind of the guinea pigs for it. This is this one. Wow, perfect flush fit. I'm gonna install this and then I'm gonna show you guys like just how good it came out with the measurements. And then this will go this way. This is what I was talking about. You can see these will Y into this, so it's not all this extra routing and we can keep everything, you know, super tight fit. I can already tell, these aren't bolted down, but I can already tell that I'm gonna actually clock the front one probably about 20 degrees, so it's perfectly in line here. You can see it's like right here, so we need to clock that this way so it's more free flowing. And then this one maybe 10 degrees. I just want them to be perfectly, like, if you were to put the hose on it, it would want to fall right into a Y fitting that'll be here. Let's get some bolts in these. Now they do have spacers as well. I'm not too worried about the spacers right now. This is actually really thick plastic. Oh yeah, you can feel that just, I love that. Like as a designer, it's like when you get your measurements so perfect that it really doesn't fit unless you like give it a little oomph and then it's like perfect tight fit. Like that's the best feeling in the world. You're almost like, oh crap, I made it, you know, too tight, but then it's like your tolerances are literally like 1/1000th of an inch or a 0.1 of a millimeter to where, you know, the naked eye and when you put it on there, it's not perfect fitting, but then as soon as you kind of snap it on, it's perfect. I also do see that on the inside of the velocity stack, here, I'll grab another one to show you. You can see how KTM has like this lip that extends. It's a little thinner lip, and that sits inside of the wall of the throttle body through the flange. So what I think I'm gonna do in the final design is I'll actually extend this a little bit more, just because I can kind of see a gap in here. I don't know if you can really tell, but there's like probably a 2 mil gap between the throttle body and the actual velocity stack. You know, we're completely seated all the way to the metal throttle body face with the AIRBOX, but you see how the throttle body slides in that flange. I can at least go like 1.5 mil on the velocity stack design, and then that should get us to where we want to be as far as perfectly flush. Now it's time. Let's mock fit the air filter and hope we got this right. So for now, I'm just gonna tuck these injector wires in here. Wow, literally like what I was talking about. It's such a tight fit that you have to like kind of push it down over top of it. And now I can already tell with this piece on the Rottweiler filter, so it is exactly the same flatness as the flange, but I don't know if you can tell like how wide it is. I think on my design, I maybe made it too shallow because it's, I don't know, it's hitting slightly, but let's lock that in there. See if we can get this over on the other side. It's really nice and tight.
That's what she said.
Wow, it just kind of popped in like that. And then that pops in. And then that's on. I mean, guys, it's on. Like that is a quick release Rottweiler filter on a 3rd gen SUPERDUKE with a flange and velocity stacks. I can already tell in there, it's hitting that little piece. So I am gonna like basically extend that little wall right there. I'm gonna extend it out a little bit. That way this will sit perfectly flat and flush. I mean, I know I could force it on there and it would sit flat once it got over that lip, but I don't want to have to, you know, really use pressure or anything. It should sit and then boop, boop, be really quick. But I mean, proof of concept's there. Like we did it, guys. Look. We have a freaking AIRBOX, man. That's awesome. Look, I'm so excited. I mean, I've been waiting over a year to get to this moment where we have an AIRBOX, and you know what the next step is. This is the last thing that's really preventing us from starting this bike, besides the dash, as you've seen in the last episode. But we had a lot of parts come in the meantime. So I actually have the dash. I've got the speed sensor rings that we got for it. Like so many things I've done behind the scenes so that this thing can go smooth sailing from here on out, and we can ride this bike very, very soon. So what I'm gonna do, I'm not gonna end the video here. I want you guys to see finished product. So I'm gonna go ahead, play with the design a little bit, fix those little things that I don't like, print another AIRBOX, and then we'll do a final fitment and check the AIRBOX off the list. Da, da, da. There it is, boys. Final production, first test. AIRBOX all cleaned up. Final design. Let's assemble everything like we just did on the tester. I've got the final velocity stacks printing as we speak. Well, technically they just started, but they'll be ready in 5 hours, 20 seconds YouTube time. But let's get this uninstalled and get the final production AIRBOX on here. Well, the final fitment of the AIRBOX is absolutely perfect the way that I love it, but I was waiting on the final velocity stacks to print, and I had a little bit of an issue. We had a power outage and all of the printers died. I don't know what happened. Sometimes when we have a power outage, these cheaty printers, they actually just pick up where the print left. But with 17 minutes left on the print, we lost power. So those are gonna take about 4 hours to print. So while we're waiting for those, we're not gonna end the video here. We're actually gonna do a little bit of work on the bike while we're waiting. Even though this is an AIRBOX video, I know you guys are just as excited to see this thing run, hear it start up, install that sick exhaust on it. So what I'm gonna do is, while we're waiting for those velocity stacks to finish printing, I've got all the stuff for the oil change. There's no oil in the bike. As you can see, we don't have any of the smog stuff on the bike. So I'm actually going to install our stage 2 Rottweiler kit. It comes with the block offs, the plugs, all the stuff you need. We're probably not gonna be using a lot of this because we don't have a normal AIRBOX. None of the stuff that needs to be blocked off. We'll be using the block offs, and I know that we'll use the SAS delete plug. I'll go ahead, replace the cartridge filter, replace both of the oil drain plugs and screens, and then we'll throw some brand new Motul in this thing. We're doing it, guys. I know we're not starting the bike this video, but we're gonna start installing the exhaust. We're just gonna get it on there. I wanna see how it looks. I've got 4 real hours of time to burn up while we're waiting on velocity stacks, so we might as well. Now, hopefully you guys see it, because if it looks like shit, I'm not posting this. Oh, she's ready to go. This is all the mounting hardware for it. It's like this little bracket for the bodywork. And then this is supposed to fit on the RC8. Instead of having these two holes here, they're actually like this. They're the same diameter as this. So what I'm gonna have to do, oh, I hate to say it, but it looks like we're only gonna get one mount in there. Damn, it's almost like it should have a hole right there. I really don't want to drill that bracket. This is like an unobtainable kit, so if we don't have to drill the bracket, I don't want to. And I don't want you guys to think like, oh, he put one less bolt in there. It's just, it's one of those things that if it's snug up against there, the rest of the exhaust bolted down, it's not gonna hurt anything. But of course we'll test. We test, we try, we test again. Oh, I think drilling the hole might be in our cards, which is okay. We might have enough meat on there to drill and tap that, I think. But we'll at least see how this exhaust fits up. Yeah, as you can see, it's on nice and tight. Oh, she's on there, boys. Who would have thought we would see an Acura Evo 1 on a SUPERDUKE engine? Wow. Now, let me bring you up to speed. We weren't able to use this second mounting hole here because on the 1190 engine, that's where the holes are. And on the SUPERDUKE engine, it's actually up here. Now, this is not moving. That is hard mounted on there, but I may try to drill that out since they're only 5 mil bolts instead of 8 mil and see if we can't, you know, just put another fastener in there. And then the muffler, everything is nice and tight, but on the back side, I don't know if you can see in there, but the right side of the mount is not bolted up. But what I think I'm gonna do, you can see that little hole in there. So if I make like a little spacer and basically have it come out to where we can tap another hole here, we can actually mount that up and secure it. But you can see there's hardly any movement at all in the exhaust. Man, she's coming together, guys. It's almost 2 a.m. I'm gonna get some sleep. Our velocity stacks are still printing, so we'll let those print and then we'll finish her up in the morning. Here it is, the moment of truth. I've just got the fuel line connector kind of sitting on there. So, like I say, next episode we'll do the fuel hoses. I'll make some minor changes to these velocity stacks. We've got our injectors plugged in, everything's ran tight. We made sure the seal is good. Everything's bolted on, and then put this on here. And it should just snap in. Wow, that is a tight fit. Oh my gosh, it fits so good.
That's what she said. Excuse me? That's what she said.
There it is, boys. We have an AIRBOX. We actually have a functional AIRBOX that we're gonna be able to use this on the bike. Now, I will tell you, spoiler alert, I did test the tank and it fits perfectly. We don't have any issues with it hitting at all. Everything clears, the fuel line, the fuel level sensors, everything on the RC8 tank that have just been such a hurdle to overcome They all fit. The AIRBOX is solid. It is perfect. I'm actually shaking the whole bike. But this is exciting news, guys. This is the major hurdle on this build. This is the reason that nobody's doing 3rd gen swaps, because of the AIRBOX issue. I mean, I hate to say it, but even companies like Rottweiler Performance, like it's hard to create these parts when there's so many obstacles to overcome. We did it. We absolutely did it, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Also, thank you for all the positive support that I've been getting online from you guys. I mean, everything from the comments and messages, you know, as well as seeing the excitement and the impatientness that you guys have for this build. It's awesome to see that you guys are as excited about this build as we are. We love doing this stuff, so I hope we can do more of it. If you guys enjoyed watching, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below. You know, what are you thinking on this build? What colors should we go on the bodywork? What aftermarket parts should we do on this? Because we have a lot of stuff to do on this bike. The next episode, we're doing rear sets, we're doing radiator, we're doing the plumbing. We are gonna shoot to have a first start by next video. I've got the dash, I've got the ABS sensors that we were missing. I have all of the parts to finish this bike. So videos are gonna be coming every week like I've intended, but it's gonna be a lot more of the RC8 content because we're ready to go. We've been a year delayed over this AIRBOX, but now we're good to go. Our goal for 2025 is to hit 100K subs, and you can help us do that by subscribing down below. Turn on the bell notification so that way you can stay up to date to all of our builds and kooky stuff that we do. We'll see you on the next one.